Have you ever looked at home prices in San Diego and thought, something about this doesn't quite add up? How is this normal? Well, you're right. There is a lot more going on behind these prices than people realize. What most people don't understand is that the reason San Diego homes are so expensive has very little to do with any single moment in the market. It's not just interest rates, it's not just investors, and it's not just recent demand. The reality is this: San Diego home prices were shaped over decades by forces that were already in place long before you started thinking about buying or selling here. I'm Melina, and I've helped people buy and sell in San Diego for over 20 years. Every day, I see how these pricing pressures show up in real life, in buyer competition, in areas with housing inventories low, and in surprising price difference between neighborhoods that look similar on the surface. This video isn't about hype or speculation. It's about understanding why prices here stay high even when the broader market cools. Because once you understand that, everything about the San Diego market starts falling into place. And if you stick around till the end, I'll give you some key strategies for buying or selling a home even in a market as competitive as ours. Now, the biggest thing to understand is that demand in San Diego isn't just about one thing. It stems from dozens of factors that all play a role. A lot of cities depend on one main engine of housing demand. When that engine slows, prices adjust. But San Diego is different. Here, demand comes from multiple directions at the same time, and those demand sources don't all turn on or off altogether. Those layers of demand matter because they keep pressure on prices even during slower periods. The first factor is probably the most obvious, yet it's still underestimated: the sunshine tax. Yes, it's very real, and it's arguably the largest factor that keeps prices here so high. Here in San Diego, we average 267 days of sunshine a year with an average daily high of 70 degrees. But our weather isn't just a nice perk, it fundamentally shapes our everyday life here, and people are willing to pay for that. Our mild weather supports year-round outdoor living. Backyard patios are used on a weekly basis, and walkable neighborhoods matter more when you can comfortably be outside most of the year. Proximity to the beaches, bays, parks, and hiking trails become part of daily life, not just to be enjoyed on vacation. But even though we call this the sunshine tax, it's not a temporary premium, it's structural. Our climate and geography are here to stay, and so is the lifestyle appeal that comes with them. That demand shows up across many price points, from condos to single-family homes, and it doesn't disappear just because the market slows down a little bit. But that leads us to the second big factor. San Diego is so much more than a sunny resort city. It's an economic powerhouse. It's a common misconception that San Diego is mostly a tourist destination, when in reality, it's a major employment center in several critical industries. The region has a strong and diverse job base that includes defense and military-related work, biotech and life science, healthcare, education, and technology. These sectors tend to attract stable employment and, in many cases, higher earning households. When those big checks are competing for a limited amount of homes, prices tend to hold firm or get pushed even higher. Even during periods of uncertainty, most people still need housing near where they work. This is one reason San Diego doesn't always track neatly with national housing headlines. Local fundamentals matter here, and they're highly resilient. I mentioned defense work, and San Diego is a military town at its core. That military presence plays a bigger role in housing demand than many people realize. Between service members, civilian employees, and contractors and their families, there's steady demand for housing within reasonable commuting distances of major bases. That demand doesn't disappear when interest rates change. It doesn't pause during economic uncertainty. All those people still need a place to live. This creates a consistent layer of housing demand, particularly in neighborhoods tied to those commute patterns. It's another reason inventory stays tight in specific pockets of the city. Now, let's look at another aspect of work here. We all remember how 2020 changed the way people work. Some jobs went back to in-person work, but many companies realized that their employees could be just as effective at home. Remote work didn't create San Diego's housing challenges, but it did widen the buyer pool. For anyone in the country with a remote position and the money to afford it, San Diego instantly became an attractive option. That doesn't mean every remote worker is buying here, but it does mean for more households that are able to consider it than ever before. Even if their employers are based elsewhere, that expanded competition tends to show up most clearly in neighborhoods with strong amenities, coastal access, or central locations. Before we keep going, if this has been helpful to you so far, I'd love for you to subscribe. I post weekly videos like this to explain San Diego real estate in clear, simple terms to help you make informed decisions about buying or selling here. Now let's talk about supply and why it's so constrained. Strong demand alone doesn't fully explain high prices. The other half of the equation is supply, and this is where San Diego becomes uniquely challenging. People often say San Diego just needs to build more housing, and in theory, that's completely true. Building more housing would solve most of our problems, but actually doing that is far more complicated than it sounds. To start with, San Diego is physically boxed in. To the west, there's the Pacific Ocean. To the south, there's the international border with Mexico. To the north, there's Camp Pendleton that limits expansion. And to the east, mountains and desert make large-scale sprawl difficult. Unlike cities like Houston or Phoenix that can expand outward easily, San Diego's growth gets funneled inward. That increases competition for existing homes and pushes redevelopment and infill into the spotlight. Those solutions take time. New construction helps, but it can't erase decades of shortage. There's been some limited improvement in housing production in recent years, but that progress exists within the context of a long-standing housing shortage that developed over many years. Even when construction picks up, demand often stacks up faster than supply can respond. That means that while prices may soften at times, the baseline remains high. This is what people mean when they say the imbalance is structural. It wasn't created overnight, and it doesn't unwind overnight either. And the limited availability of land isn't the only constraint. Zoning rules and height limits also play a major role in shaping what can actually be built. Many neighborhoods limit density, which restricts how much housing can be added even when demand is strong. On top of that, the San Diego airport is located right next to downtown, which means our urban center has strict height restraints. Even in the city center, where you might expect to see skyscrapers over 1,000 feet, there's 500-foot building limits. And west of the I-5 freeway, most buildings are limited to just 30 feet in height and preserve coastal views and maintain a calmer beach town feel. That severely limits San Diego's redevelopment options in several major areas. It also pushes more competition into neighborhoods further east, where building is easier. The result is uneven supply growth and intensified demand in specific pockets. Here's what that low supply means for you. Even when prices adjust or soften, San Diego's starting point remains high. Market data consistently shows elevated median prices compared to national averages, along with relative short selling timelines in many areas. Those numbers may fluctuate, but the underlying pattern stays the same. Demand continues to outpace available inventory. Of course, not all San Diego neighborhoods are priced the same, and coastal and central areas consistently command even higher prices for reasons similar to those I've mentioned. Coastal communities tend to hold premiums because the ocean access and unique atmosphere are tough to replicate. The land there is even more severely limited than in the rest of San Diego, and the height restrictions I mentioned only add to the issue. Most of these areas are already fully built out, so at this point there's no easy way to add supply without changing those construction and zoning restrictions. And like any major city, the most central neighborhoods remain competitive because of their proximity to job centers, hospitals, universities, restaurants, parks, and major transportation corridors. Everyone values convenience, so naturally that increases long-term demand, especially in the case of San Diego. Buyers are paying for convenience and scarcity at the same time, and that combination usually comes at a premium. Our universities and medical institutions add another important layer of long-term housing demand. Major universities like UCSD and SDSU attract tens of thousands of students and faculty. And when those students graduate, they're often employed in research hubs like Sorrento Valley or in one of our top-notch hospital systems like Sharp or Scripps. And again, many of these tech and medical professionals will naturally prefer to live within reasonable proximity to where they work. Because these huge institutions aren't tied to short-term economic swings, the housing demand they generate tends to be steady rather than cyclical. Over time, that consistency helps support pricing in nearby neighborhoods and contributes to the overall stability of the local housing market. Then there is San Diego's role as a port city, which is yet another factor in its economic diversity. The Port of San Diego supports more than just tourism, though cruise travel, and it brings in jobs through shipping, ship repair, and waterfront businesses. These activities generate billions of dollars each year and support tens of thousands of local jobs across everything from logistics and construction to hospitality and defense. So by now, it should be clear that San Diego economic backbone doesn't depend on any one market. Diverse economies tend to support housing markets over time, and that's an important backdrop if you're buying a home here. Understanding these built-in forces should change how you plan, because you can't rely on a sudden surge of inventory or a quick market shift to solve affordability overnight. Instead, the most effective strategy is this. First, define your price range, the amount you'd ideally like to pay all the way to the upper limit of what you can afford. Next, identify your true non-negotiables, the amenities you absolutely can't live without. Maybe that's a big backyard or a two-car garage. Maybe it's being within 10 minutes of the beach or workplace. And finally, focus on neighborhoods that actually support your day-to-day life rather than just what looks appealing online. Many buyers fall in love with the idea of living near the beach without really stopping to think about whether they might be nearly as happy with a similar but much more affordable home further east in Poway or La Mesa. Buyers who get specific about trade-offs early, whether that's location versus lot size, turnkey versus value add, or condo versus detached, tend to find what they're looking for more quickly with far less frustration. In San Diego, indecision can get very expensive quickly, and that's equally true when you're selling. These same structural forces can work in your favor, but only if your plan is aligned with your specific micro-market. Many neighborhoods still attract strong competition, while others are far more sensitive to price and condition of the home than they were in the past. Buyers today have access to more data and tend to compare homes carefully, which means preparation matters more than ever. And pricing has never been more critical. In a high-cost market, overpricing even slightly can drastically reduce your showings and momentum early on. This is why local context is vital when pricing in San Diego. Your pricing, your street, your buyer pool, and your today's active competition. And whether you're buying or selling, working with a qualified professional can make a massive difference to your bottom line. An experienced agent can negotiate the most money for you and help ensure you're making informed decisions that align with your broader goals. So let's recap. The real reason that San Diego homes are so expensive is built into the history and fabric of the city. Over decades, strong and diversified demand has continued to collide with constrained supply in a city limited by geography. But not just that, by regulation and long-term underbuilding. Weather, lifestyle, job diversity, and military presence, universities and global economic ties all contribute to steady demand, while physical boundaries, zoning rules, and slow-moving construction limit how quickly supply can respond. None of these forces are tied to a single year or a single market cycle, and they don't reverse quickly. That's why prices here can remain elevated even when the national market cools or buyer activities are slowing elsewhere. Understanding this context is important because it reframes how you approach real estate decisions in San Diego. Instead of reacting to headlines or waiting for dramatic shifts, the focus should be on you, your home preferences, your finances, and your readiness to make a change. Whether you're buying or selling, success in this market usually comes from aligning your expectations with local realities, knowing which neighborhood best suits your situation, and making decisions based on data and long-term fit rather than short-term noise. Now that you understand what's actually driving the San Diego market, the high prices here should start to make sense, and your next step should become more clear. If this video helped you understand the market better, please consider subscribing. I share videos like this to help you make informed decisions here in San Diego. And if you're thinking about buying or selling in San Diego, the most valuable thing you can have is a clear, data-driven strategy that fits your timeline and your neighborhood. Even if you're just in the early planning phases, please reach out. Sometimes the most important step is simply understanding your choices. Thanks for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the next video.